And this is my full card prediction and breakdown. I'm going to go over every single fight on this card, prelims, early prelims, main card, and I can't fucking wait for this card. And I think this is going to do better than UFC 280. Maybe not sell more pay-per-views, it may not sell more, but I think it's going to do better. I think it's going to deliver more because a lot of these matchups are just classic striker take on striker. And I think that UFC 280, if you're looking back in retrospect, it didn't really live up to the hype. I mean, that had colossal hype and it didn't necessarily live up. So I think this one is going to be even better when it actually gets down to the night of the fight. So we're going to start off with these predictions, and we're going to start with Carlos Ulberg and Nicolae Negumereanu. I'm going to go with Nicolae Negumereanu. The guy fights like a rabid pit bull, and he is just relentless, non-stop pressure. I get the feeling that Nicolae Negumereanu could be the light heavyweight division's, next Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, just a guy who goes forward with, reckless abandon and has big power in his hands. And don't get me wrong, Carlos Ulberg, he's a pretty good technical striker. He's big, he's tall, he's long, but Nicolae Negumereanu, although he's 4 inches shorter than Carlos Ulberg, actually has a longer reach, which is fucking nuts. And let's see this reach. I'm pretty sure he has a longer reach. Anyway, Carlos Ulberg has been knocked out before by Kennedy Nzechukwu. I always get that name wrong. I don't think I'll ever get it right. But, the Nigerian Kennedy Nzechukwu. Fuck, man, that name is so hard to say. He knocked Carlos Ulberg out, and I think that was Ulberg's UFC debut. And he actually looked phenomenal in that fight, but he gassed out. He kind of blew his wad. But here's the thing. He doesn't really have that much pop in his hands. He has some heavy kicks, but Nicolae Negumereanu is a heavy hitter, and he's relentless, high-pressure style fighter, high volume, and just fights like a fucking dog that was shot up with steroids and happens to have rabies, happens to be a mutant pit bull, bro. I mean, the guy is super aggressive, and he has a 78-inch reach despite being 4 inches shorter than Carlos Ulberg, who has a 77-inch reach. I'm going to go with Nicolae Negumereanu. I think he's going to knock Carlos Ulberg out, and I think he's going to knock him out in the first or second round. So that's my first prediction. Next on the main card, Montel Jackson, Julio Arce. Montel Jackson was on a lot of people's radars in 2021, but he hasn't fought in a while. But if you guys don't know this, he has some of the most knockdowns in bantamweight history, and he's still relatively new to the UFC. And he's 5'10". Julio Arce, I believe, is 5'7". This is a bantamweight bout. Montel Jackson, I think, has some of the craziest power in the bantamweight division. And the guy has an insanely long reach for bantamweights. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Montel Jackson. I'm going to pick him by decision or by a TKO. And I think he may even get it in the first round. He's taken some time out of the game. I think he'll come back with some serious improvements. Don't get me wrong, Julio Arce is a pretty good, formidable foe, but I mean, Montel Jackson has a 75-inch reach. And man, I just think he's going to be too powerful for Julio Arce. I'm going to pick him to knock him out, actually. So if he doesn't get the knockout, I think he'll get a couple knockdowns. But this guy, if he's not on your radar, just watch this fight because he has some serious power for bantamweight. Michael Trizano and Seungwoo Choi. I'm going to go with Seungwoo Choi. I'm going to pick him by decision just because Michael Trizano is just, he kind of has a little bit of a mediocre style. There's nothing that he does that stands out. He is a striker predominantly, but again, he's just not a very great striker. He's not flashy. He doesn't have a lot of power. He's not particularly fast. He's just kind of like a bottom of the barrel UFC fighter. I know he did really well in the season of TUF. I just think that Seungwoo Choi is so talented. He's really long for the featherweight division. Seungwoo Choi is a guy who is not only talented, he's not only long, but he's also young. He's probably, in my opinion, the most promising fighter out of South Korea. 6 foot for featherweight, pretty tall featherweight, 74.5-inch reach, which is a pretty good reach for featherweight, and he's just too talented. I think he's gonna run through Michael Trizano, and he has power. He's a pretty muscular guy for featherweight. He has good power, a piston of a right hand, and I just see him being too long for Michael Trizano. I think he'll be able to keep it at distance, and I think he'll just be able to crack Trizano over 3 rounds and frustrate him and cruise it out to a decision. I just don't think that Michael Trizano is on this level, and I think Seungwoo Choi is a future ranked fighter at featherweight. I really do. And it's just going to boil down to talent and athleticism and speed, power. Seungwoo Choi has all of that, and he's a better striker. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, another name I can't say, but I remember seeing her fight on the Woodley Till card where she got viciously knocked out. I think it was against Andrade. And honestly, I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't fucking care about this fight at all, nor am I probably even going to watch this one. I'll probably be on my phone, maybe making some food. I'm never gonna bullshit you guys and say, oh, I know a lot about this fight. I don't really know anything about these girls, okay? So I'm just gonna, I think, I don't have a pick. I'll be real. Let's just move on. Matt Frevola, Ottman Azaitar. Matt Frevola is the underdog. And, you know, when I look at this fight, I got to go with Ottman Azaitar. Not only because he's got bigger power. I mean, that definitely plays a part. But I get the feeling that, like, Ottman Azaitar, before he had the potato sack at Fight Island incident, if you guys don't know, Ottman Azaitar was caught sneaking something into Fight Island. This is during the, you know, the time where the UFC had the shutdown. I can't really say it on YouTube, but they had the shutdown and they had to not have fans. They moved to Fight Island, and you weren't allowed to, like, sneak anything in and all that. Like, you know, there were some strict protocols. And he snuck in a bag of potatoes, allegedly, but it was probably gear. It's probably juice. And yeah, essentially he was almost kicked out of the UFC, banned forever. But his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, was able to work some magic to get him back in the UFC. Go figure. I just think that, you know, before that, Ottman Azaitar was seen as like a guy who was a serious threat in that lightweight division. Big power, pretty good striker, and he actually has pretty good fight IQ. I don't remember exactly who his last opponent is. He hasn't fought in a while. But I just remember seeing him get kind of rocked in that fight, and he just makes really good decisions when he's rocked. Like, he clinches up, he slows the fight down, and he's able to work his way back into things. I've never really seen Matt Frevola wow me, and I think Ottman Azaitar has taken some time off. He's going to come back looking pretty good. Now, this may be the case of, you know, Santiago Ponzinibbio coming back after a long layoff and getting knocked out. I could definitely see that happening, but I'm going to go with Ottman Azaitar by decision. Andre Petroski, Wellington Turman. I'm going with Andre Petroski. I think he's going to win this one by decision. He'll cruise to a decision. I think he'll use his wrestling, his grappling, and I think Wellington Turman is a little bit overrated. I don't really think he's that good. I'm going to go with Andre Petroski by decision. Erin Blanchfield, Molly McCann. I'd love to pick Molly McCann, and you know what? Molly McCann is one of my favorite women's fighters in the UFC. She's really entertaining. I love the fact that she has an entire country that gets behind her, and, you know, when she performs in the UK, she's able to, like, just live up to the occasion, just like Paddy Pimblett. And she's gotten some spectacular knockouts in the UK, and I honestly have loved those moments because the UK cards are so fun. There's such a different feel that the UK fans have when you know they have a main event. But Erin Blanchfield is probably looking like she'll get that decision win, maybe a submission. I know she's a grappler, and yeah, look at the odds, minus 380 for Erin Blanchfield. I would just say don't put Molly McCann on your parlay if you have her on a parlay, but I want Molly McCann to win this, and man, her striking has looked pretty damn good, and she's pretty damn aggressive, and I think that I don't know, man. She's in her way one of the bigger stars in the women's divisions. I think you could probably make an argument that she's top 5 biggest stars just because she's from the UK. She has that relationship with Paddy Pimblett, and you know, I just think I don't know. I think Erin Blanchfield is probably going to get this by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Molly McCann knocks her out in the first round, and it's just chaos. This is such a good card. Holy shit. Dominick, Reyes, and Ryan Spann, Brad Riddell. This is the prelims, bro. This is the prelims. I mean, this could literally just be the main event of a fight night and the co-main event of a stacked fight night right here. Or these could be on the main card. But Dominick Reyes and Ryan Spann, I would be absolutely pissed if I see Dominick Reyes get knocked out again. And we all saw Dominick Reyes' fight with John Jones, where he pretty much beat John Jones 3-2. We all saw it, and that was the worst John Jones has ever looked. and the best Dominick Reyes has ever looked. And I think that Dominick Reyes made a turnaround against Jan Blachowicz, and he kind of had that I just beat John Jones mindset, and that was his downfall. He probably underestimated Jan Blachowicz, and he paid for it. Got picked apart and knocked out and destroyed in that fight. And then he turned around to fight Jiri Prochazka. I guess it was pretty long after. It wasn't that long after, actually. And he got viciously knocked out. Elbowed, knocked out. That was one of the most brutal knockouts I've seen. One of the best fights I've seen. Dominick Reyes still looked good in that fight, but he just got broken. And I would hate to see Dominick Reyes fight gun shy, because he does have a chin in these exchanges where, you know, he is getting knocked out. This is after, you know, many exchanges of him also landing. And Dominick Reyes has big power. He does have a decent chin. Ryan Spann doesn't have the best chin. And Ryan Spann is not very talented. He's not very good. He just has big power. And I just think Dominick Reyes is going to be too talented. I mean, you look at Jiri Prochazka, Jan Blachowicz. These are some of the best strikers in the light heavyweight division. Ryan Spann isn't among them. Ryan Spann, I think that after 10 in the light heavyweight division, things really go downhill. I just think Dominick Reyes is too talented. But I could definitely see Dominick Reyes going in there gun shy, and being a shell of his former self. He has taken a lot of time off. He says that he's rejuvenated. This could be his Masvidal, moment where he's able to just put his career back on track. But I don't know, man. It's a tough one, but I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes, and I honestly think he might win this one by decision. I just don't know if he's going to be as eager and as aggressive, because Ryan Spann does hit hard. But I think that Dominick Reyes could really win this one by decision. Or if he comes out aggressive, I think he could even get a knockout. But I'm going with Dominick Reyes. I think he's just too talented. Going to be too much on the feet for Ryan Spann. He's too quick. Next on, Brad Riddell, Renato Moicano. I'm going to go with Renato Moicano by submission. And I'm going to pick him by first round submission. Now, Renato Moicano has some really underrated wins. You know, he has a win over Calvin Kattar. You know, he has a win over Alexander Hernandez, who's also a pretty good grappler, a good wrestler, and he just submitted him, wrapped him up, and choked him out. Renato Moicano has some great wins, honestly. And Brad Riddell, I understand people are picking him because, you know, they know Renato Moicano doesn't have great stand-up, and they just saw him get his ass kicked by RDA. But that was on short notice. I think that was the worst Renato Moicano we could have gotten. And it almost seemed before that fight that Renato Moicano was making a little bit of a resurgence and, you know, going to actually make a rise in that lightweight division. But he got stopped by RDA, who's still pretty damn good. But he didn't really look all that great in that fight, and I think that was because he took it on short notice. And right before that, he had a fight like a few weeks before. I think he's going to come out here. I think he's going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Brad Riddell. He may lose a lot of those exchanges, but Brad Riddell doesn't really hit all that hard. The guy doesn't have any knockouts in the UFC, and he's been knocked out now by Fiziev. You know, he's gotten cracked by Jalen Turner, and what does that do to your confidence? You know, you are the kickboxing guy. You're the kickboxing guru, like the coach at Tiger Muay Thai. You know, that is a pretty lofty title to have. And when you're getting cracked by these guys in the UFC, Fiziev, that's no shame by getting cracked by him. He was also another guy with the title of being the coach at Tiger Muay Thai. But Jalen Turner, you know, he's phenomenal. He cracked Brad Riddell, made him look easy. You know, now Renato Moicano is not going to have that same reach advantage. Well, he will have a reach advantage, but he won't be the size of a Jalen Turner. That guy's probably, you know, one of the weight bullies in that division. I just think Renato Moicano is tough enough to take these shots from Brad Riddell. He does have a pretty good chin. I know he's been knocked out by Fiziev, but he wasn't knocked out cold. You know, I just think Renato Moicano is going to be able to crack Brad Riddell, or just maybe take his back, get him to the ground, maybe pull guard, and just wrap him up in a submission. I really do. I think Brad Riddell is pretty damn one-dimensional. And I just don't think he'll be able to deal with a Renato Moicano, a guy who can strike, maybe not as well as Jalen Turner or Fiziev, but he can strike. And he's had a full training camp. He's coming into this one hungry. He knows Brad Riddell is not the best grappler. Brad Riddell can sometimes shoot for weird takedowns when he's hurt. It's just his tendency. And I just think Renato Moicano can wrap him up in a submission and choke him out. Moving on up the card, I'm going Renato Moicano, and I'm going to say first round submission. Dan Hooker, Claudio Puelles. I'm going with Claudio Puelles. It's crazy. I haven't picked a single city kickboxing guy in this video, and I don't think I will. And it's not that I dislike these guys. I'm just looking at the matchups, and I think Claudio Puelles is is on his way up. He hasn't lost since 2016. He is a finisher as well. He was able to out grapple guys like Jordan Levitt, who is a pretty good wrestler, grappler himself. And I mean, listen, Jordan Levitt's not losing to any slouches in the grappling. Paddy Pimblett has great grappling, and Claudio Puelles does too. And I think Claudio Puelles, honestly, if he comes into this fight with better hands, if he comes into this fight looking a little sharper on the feet, I think he's going to take Dan Hooker out. I think he may even crack Dan Hooker. Now, people are saying Dan Hooker, he's only lost to guys like Michael Chandler, Islam Makhachev. He's only lost to Arnold Allens, like guys that are really high up in their divisions. But he's older. And ever since that Dustin Poirier fight, he's never been the same. And he's barely scraping past Nasrat Haqparast. And I think that if you give Dan Hooker Nasrat Haqparast in his prime, I think he's destroying Nasrat Haqparast. He's just a different fighter. He's the older man now. He's an old 32. He's been through so many wars. He's much slower. He's less coordinated. He doesn't fight with nearly as much aggression as he used to fight. You know, and that could be because he's been getting knocked out. And I don't know if he's as confident in his chin anymore. He used to be able to take big shots. But that Michael Chandler KO and the Dan Hooker knockout, I mean, I just think Claudio Puelles is young. He's hungry. He's got a point to prove. He wants to make a statement at Madison Square Garden. I feel like Dan Hooker, you know, I've heard stories about his coach saying he's gotten complacent in the gym, that he's been stubborn. We have to really, you know, kick him in the ass to get him to train hard. And I just don't like these things that I'm hearing about Dan Hooker. And sure, he may be able to he may have had a good training camp, but he's just, sometimes your mind can go far. You can push yourself mentally, but your body just can't keep up. And I think Dan Hooker is just physically paling in comparison to the Dan Hooker that we once saw. I'm going to go with Claudio Puelles. I don't think he's like the next Charles Oliveira who's going to come back and just, you know, start to knock everyone out and become a champion based on his grappling. But I think he'll actually be able to prove that he can beat a guy like Dan Hooker. I think Claudio Puelles is very good, very talented. I think he's going to submit Dan Hooker. I really do. And I think he'll submit him in the second or the third round. So that's my pick. Frankie Edgar, Chris Gutierrez. I am going to go with Chris Gutierrez, and I think I'm going to go with Chris Gutierrez by decision. Same thing for Frankie Edgar. Like, he's a smart fighter, but he's been getting cracked. That chin is getting worse. He's been knocked out quite a bunch in his UFC career now, and I just think that Chris Gutierrez is going to be able to crack him. I don't think he'll put him out. Chris Gutierrez doesn't have a lot of power, but yeah, man, Frankie Edgar, I can't really pick you if this is your retirement fight. I don't really pick guys in the retirement fights. I mean, I think he's going to lose this one. I'm sorry. And I don't really like the idea of a retirement fight. Yay, you know, a legend, UFC legend. We're going to celebrate you by putting you up against a young, hungry contender who wants to make a name off of you, who's still, you know, gunning to be a UFC champion. I just don't see it. So I'm going to go with Chris Gutierrez. Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. I can't wait for this fight. And I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people suspect. And you know what? I heard Michael Chandler say, I'm not trying to make this a fight of the night. I just want to get the win. And I think Michael Chandler may have the tools to get it. Now, I have two picks. I'm thinking Dustin Poirier, third round knockout. And I think that's even if Michael Chandler grapples. I think there is something to be said about the fact that he doesn't grapple is due to the idea that maybe he thinks he'll gas out. And maybe he has gassed out in training when he does really try to grapple hard in sparring. But Dustin Poirier isn't all that good on the ground. And when you're on your back, you know, we're not even talking about a guy with Charles Oliveira Jiu-Jitsu. Dustin Poirier off of his back, he's not going to submit Michael Chandler. I know he's got a good guillotine, but he's not submitting Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's just one of those guys, like Alex Volkanovski, just a short, compact, like, ball of fire and aggression. Like, you can't really wrap those guys up in submissions. And Michael Chandler is one hell of a grappler. I mean, Charles Oliveira had him in some bad positions. He's had his back. Michael Chandler has grappled with a lot of good fighters. And I just think that Michael Chandler can get a dominant position on Dustin Poirier. And I think he can take him down with ease. If he just goes in there, tries to clinch up with Dustin Poirier, I think he wins. So if we see Michael Chandler shoot for a takedown early on, or just try to clinch within the first minute and then get a takedown off of the fence and just keep Dustin Poirier there and just, you know, land some good ground and pound shots, I think he wins. I really do. There's a chance he could gas out and come out in the third round, but here's the thing. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going with Michael Chandler. I'm going with Michael Chandler. I think he takes Dustin Poirier down, and I think he just works on the ground the entire fight. And I think Dustin Poirier is going to gas out because he knows it's a 3-rounder. He knows he has to expend all of his energy. It's not a 5-rounder. It's not one of those times where you're on the ground with the Charles and the Khabib in the second round, third round. I have 2 more rounds. I'm not going to blow all my energy trying to get up. I'll just wait until I'm on the feet next round. It's not like that. It's a 3-rounder, and you only have 15 minutes, and you have to make something happen now. You have to make your investment shots as well. And I just don't think Dustin Poirier can get anything going early on if Michael Chandler does wrestle. I mean, he's taking guys down with good takedown defense with ease, like a Justin Gaethje. The way he took down Tony Ferguson, I know Tony Ferguson's a shell of his former self, but still, he made him fly across the octagon. I just think I'm going with Michael Chandler by decision. I think he'll impress a lot of people, and I'd rather see him win as well because I think he has more competitive fights with the grapplers at the top of that division than Dustin Poirier does. I wouldn't be surprised if Dustin Poirier gets the knockout, but I'm going to go with the underdog and Michael Chandler. Moving on up the fight card, Zhang Weili is going to viciously knock out Carla Esparza. I think we all know it. I'm surprised as to why I don't see the odds, but I'm going to go with Zhang Weili. Picking up Francis Ngannou, she hits pads like a man. Carla Esparza, I've seen her on Embedded. I mean, typical, women's fighter hitting pads. But I mean, listen, Zhang Weili is probably my favorite female fighter. She's the most entertaining, the most vicious, and it's no mystery as to why she's my favorite fighter. She fights like a fucking she's one of the better strikers in the UFC in my opinion. She's a beast. And Carla Esparza isn't. She's a decision monger, and Zhang Weili is going to knock her out. And she has good grappling. She has good wrestling. She's strong as an ox. I think she's going to beat the shit out of Carla Esparza and finish her. I don't think Carla Esparza, she's not really the champ. She didn't have a real fight with Rose Namajunas. I understand if she could have a slow fight and win against Rose, that'd be okay. But it wasn't a slow fight. It wasn't a fight at all. And no one really deserved to win that. She's not the real champ. She's going to lose to Zhang Weili. She's not on that level. I think Rose Namajunas could probably beat her too if she actually fought with some kind of aggression. So I'm going with Zhang.
If you're still eating seed oil and soy-filled cookies like Oreos, you're just demolishing your health. So I'm gonna show you guys how to make some real cookies that are both healthy and delicious.
We're gonna make my famous chocolate chip cookies. Combine 2 pasture-raised eggs with some grass-fed or raw butter, some good quality animal fats, add some organic vanilla extract, and about a cup of raw honey. Now we're gonna mix it up and get ready for the most crucial ingredient, our einkorn wheat. This is the rawest, most original form of wheat. We're gonna add a half a banana to give these cookies a little more flavor, and just look at that beautiful cookie dough. We're gonna mix that up, and to top it off, of course, our chocolate chips. We're gonna use 100% organic cacao nibs, the most raw form of chocolate. Put this in the oven at 375 for 10 minutes and enjoy. These are the tastiest cookies I've ever had, and for more recipes like this, check out my Real Food Cookbook. You can find the link in my bio.
Really, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya, okay. I'm thinking, I've been seeing a lot, and Izzy doesn't really just seem to be... I honestly heard Israel Adesanya say, I'm going to destroy him, or, maybe I won't, I think he's starting to second guess himself. And we saw the face-off yesterday. Israel Adesanya didn't look nearly as confident as he normally does in his face-offs. I know you can't read everything based on body language, but Alex Pereira is such a scary dude, man. Just looking at him at the press conference, that's got to be the most intimidating looking person on earth. The most intimidating, scary looking dude on earth. And I think Izzy's a little shook, man. And I'm starting to think about how can Izzy win? Can he outpoint Alex Pereira for 5 rounds and play it safe? He wasn't able to do that against a Jan Blachowicz. He was barely able to do that against a Robert Whittaker. Really didn't look that great against Jared Cannonier. And sure, he may fight to the level of his opponent sometimes, but you have to fight up quite a level. You have to go up many levels to get to where Alex Pereira is. And Alex Pereira's last kickboxing fight was last year. Izzy's last kickboxing fight was against Alex Pereira, where he got knocked out. And Alex Pereira at the time was a bum compared to who he is now, right? He was an alcoholic, a drunkard, who didn't take fighting all that serious. And now he's a 2-time Glory 2-division champion, one of the best kickboxers on earth, one of the most dangerous strikers on earth. And he happens to be 6'4" with the same reach. I know Israel Adesanya isn't going to deal with that reach very well. It's you take away these physical attributes that he has and think about all the people that he's beaten at 185. None of them have a close reach. None of them have that 80-inch reach. None of them are 6'4". None. They're all, stocky, shorter, 6-foot guys with not that much talent except for Robert Whittaker. And Yoel Romero, that's a separate fight. I think Yoel won that, but that was a shitty fight. We're not going to look into that too much, but Israel Adesanya, when he fought Jan Blachowicz, he got outstruck in every round. Then he got taken down. Alex Pereira has been training with Glover Teixeira. I don't think Israel Adesanya is going to grapple. I think Alex Pereira's grappling is actually going to be pretty decent in this one, but I don't think Israel Adesanya grapples. I really don't. And you know what? That's because if he does, he's not used to that, right? He's not used to that kind of pace when it comes to the grappling. He's not like Khabib, who can just grapple for 5 rounds. And he's not like Francis Ngannou, who can just bulldoze Alex Pereira. He's not like that strong. He's not the stronger man. He's the weaker man. He's the scrawnier guy. Alex Pereira is like a brick house. And if Izzy grapples, I think he'll tire out and he'll gas out. I think Alex Pereira, if anything, even if he gets tired in the later rounds, might grapple first. I just think that, Alex Pereira said, I'm not going to fight Israel Adesanya like I've beat him before. I'm going to treat it like it's the first time. And I think that's a great thing to hear him say, because that reassures me that he's not going to underestimate Izzy. He's just looking at Izzy from afar, and I think he's going to try to pick him apart. And I think he wins. I think he's the better striker, and I think he'll surprise a lot of us. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira by 2nd or 3rd round knockout. I think he's going to catch him with that left hook, put some follow-up shots on Izzy up against the fence, and put him away. And if that doesn't happen, I'll pick him by decision. I just don't see Israel Adesanya winning this one. How can he outpoint Alex Pereira when he's having extremely close fights? I mean, winning by a hair against guys like Robert Whittaker. I mean, he barely won that fight. I know Robert Whittaker's a good striker, but still, he doesn't present the same issues. And Israel Adesanya is not going to put himself in the fire. I don't care if he's been saying, I'm going to make it a horror show. He's not going to do that. He's not going to put himself in the fire. If he fights tentatively against Cannonier and Whittaker, he ain't fighting, aggressively against Alex Pereira. I know for a fucking fact he won't. Because he wasn't fighting that way with Jan Blachowicz. He respects Pereira's power. Him and his team knows what they're going up against. And he's going to try to play it safe. And I think he'll lose. He'll lose. Alex Pereira is good enough to land his shots on Israel Adesanya. I think he knocks him out, so that's my prediction. Guys, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know if you disagree with any of my picks, and let me know why. Until next time.